Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard here with GiantSlayerTV. We are just a little over 24 hours into the Curious Journey season, and we already have 4 players on the America's Shard that have reached the rank of Master. What Am I, Faint HD, 4LW from Team Hydra, and Black Boss from Team Hydra. No one's really surprised to see these players being the ones to do this as quickly as they did, but all 4 of them used very different decks to get here. No Spider aggro, no Pirate aggro, none of these aggro decks left over from the previous season, without at least a few updates from the Curious Journey set itself. So I'm going to go over these deck lists with you now, give you an idea of what it took to get here as quick as they did. If we're going in order by which they hit Masters, then Faint HD comes up first, the first player to do it, with an updated variant of Yordles in Arms. Now, there are a couple of Curious Journey cards in here, and the changes that Faint made do fundamentally change the way that the deck is both played and built, with the big one being that Lulu was dropped for Gnar. So with Lulu in the deck, you're main decking Flame Chompers, you're playing this little bit of a backup plan to control the board with these 4/4 challengers while you're waiting on your go wide setup and your Yordles in Arms coming down. Without Lulu in the deck, obviously Flame Chompers isn't nearly as impactful, so Faint replaced those with Ballistic Bot, because you still want something in the 2-drop slot that is going to facilitate the discard engines that you have within the deck, like Poro Cannon, Zonite Urchin, Get Excited, and Ballistic Bot does that beautifully while synergizing with the burn plan that you already had available, because you are getting a little bit more reach in the deck by having Gnar, not only through the Pokestick generation, but because the second level of Gnar does have Overwhelm. Now, when we look at Wallop, which is the second addition to the deck, maybe you're thinking, okay, yeah, I guess we can stun out whatever is blocking the Gnar to get full Overwhelm damage, but I like this a lot more than that, because not only is it a 1 damage ping for, like, Pokestick that you can't send at the enemy Nexus, so you don't feel bad about using it on a unit, but you can also throw it on the stack in the same instance as Yordles in Arms in order to stun out one of your opponent's blockers and give them another, you're already giving them a priority sequence to develop with the Yordles in Arms, might as well throw a stun on top of it. And ultimately, I'm a very big fan of the way that this deck was built. I think that this will become the standard for ladder over the Lulu variant, but when we're looking at something like Tournament, that might not be the case, mostly because Gnar is such a hotly contested champion among lineups right now, fitting into most Bandle City decks and a few Freljord decks alongside it. I think that when we're looking at a tournament lineup and you want to be running 3 decks that could play Gnar, this is the one that will probably function just fine without the Gnar, going back to the Lulu variant with the Flame Chompers back into the main, as that was something that was performing pretty admirably in tournaments during Magic Misadventures season. So definitely think that this is going to be the consideration for tournament lineups, but again, on ladder when you don't have to worry about things like that, I do like the Gnar variant a little bit better. Now, time is going to tell whether or not that fully becomes the case. Yordles in Arms has never been a super popular archetype. I don't expect it to blow up in playability once we sort of get the fade out from Faint hitting rank 1 with it so quickly and players just flocking to whatever hit Masters first. But ultimately, a very solid deck. Well done by Faint HD. Congratulations on being the first players to master on the America's Shard in the Curious Journey season. And the second player we have that hit Masters this season was Hydras, the Black Boss, the Between Worlds seasonal champion, doing it with Scouts, which is no surprise. Black Boss has always been a big fan of the Scout deck. Now, this one is not going to change as drastically from the old Scouts list to this Scouts list as, say, the Yordles in Arms that Faint brought was, because, one, Scouts is a pretty fluid list. When you look at the top end, this isn't necessarily something that you're going to be seeing in every Scouts list. This is how Boss likes to play the deck. But the 2 additions we do need to highlight here are Durant Sculptor as well as Petricite Broadwing. Now, Broadwing, I think a lot of players knew was going to be very strong in a lot of different Demacia archetypes, and Scouts is absolutely not going to be an exception to that. Challengers are something that Scouts are a big fan of, and when we're looking at this list side by side with, say, the list that Floppy Mudkip brought to the top 32 of the Magic Misadventure seasonal, you're going to notice that Blinding Assault was cut from the list, and maybe there is a consideration that Petricite Broadwing is going to replace Blinding Assault across the board. I don't necessarily know that is the case. It could just be a ladder adaptation, because again, ladders and tournaments are going to play out a little bit differently, more narrow fields, you know what you're playing against a little bit better, things of that nature. So maybe for a broader field, the Petricite Broadwing did just cover the bases a little bit better. The Durant Sculptor, again, is something that I'm a little bit more questionable on than the Broadwing. I think Broadwing's definitely going to stick around, but the Sculptor, it's one of those cards you need to get down early to find the value out of. There are already a number of mediocre to bad top decks in a Scouts list. So many times we have had had to watch these Scouts players get down into top deck mode and only to find Fleet Feather Trackers and Pendant Squires galore. So I'm not really as big a fan as the Durant Sculptor, but the way that Scouts is going to win the game is by getting on board early and keeping the board as early as possible, and a turn 2 Durant Sculptor is going to do that for the Scouts deck in a way that no other card in these regions can do. So it's something that I'm definitely willing to wait and see on a little bit more before I pass hard judgment on it. And Black Boss, obviously a master of the Scouts archetype, has been playing this one for a long time. So if he says that Durant Sculptor is the way, at least for the early stages of this meta, then I, for one, am inclined to believe him. But again, those are really the only 2 updates to this list. It is still the straightforward Scouts list that you all know and love, but if you've been wondering on how to update that one, these are the considerations. And the third player to hit Masters, we have Team Hydras 4LW doing it with Trundle Timelines. Now, you're not going to see a side-by-side pop up at any point here because there really wasn't an old version of Trundle Timelines that was competitive. It was more so the meme deck of Legends of Runeterra. It was a known factor. A lot of people knew about it, but it was definitely something that you played to have fun while you kind of trolled around at 0 LP Masters, not something that you used to climb from Platinum to Masters. Something like Teemo Sejuani used to fill that role before the release of Hexcore Foundry, if anybody remembers that. That is sort of what Trundle Timelines was. And the only new card that he put in here was Gnar. And Gnar is not something that is really making or breaking this deck on a grand scale. Gnar is a lot like Draven. It's a very solid champion, but you're not building your deck around him. You are just putting him in there because he's a good value engine, and he'll probably get nerfed for that sometime down the line, but that's a conversation for a different day. Instead, I do want to highlight the It That Stares Buried in Ice combo that a lot of players sort of memed about when Buried in Ice came out. This is the first time that I've seen it in something that was hitting Masters this early in the season. Now, I don't know how much of 4LW's climb was done with this deck, but I know that it was enough to have it show up when you inspect him on the ladder. Not going to go too heavy into detail on this one. Not sure if this is just 4LW doing 4LW things and innovating a deck while we're still in the early recesses of a meta and taking people by surprise given the closed deck list nature of ladder, or if this is something that we should expect 4LW to run for the first couple of weeks and maybe even catch a few more players onto in the tournament circuit. I'm willing to bet that it's the former, but again, it's really hard to say. 4LW does some crazy things with decks, so this is definitely one to have fun with. If you get to Masters in the next couple of days and you're looking for something new to try while you're still at 0 LP before you have to commit to the climb, this is definitely the one of these 4 decks that I would recommend giving a shot. And then taking up the rear, we have What Am I with a rather original creation in Gnar Auction. Now, Gnar and Papercraft Dragon being the only 2 cards from A Curious Journey in this list, but a rather unique archetype nonetheless, at least one that we haven't seen in this region combination before. No, this is comparable to Sivir Auction Demacia, as it is sort of running all of the same Shurima cards that list runs, but on a closer inspection, this is actually a lot more reminiscent of the Ionia version of Sivir Auction, sort of the original version that was looking to Flurry of Fists combo finish your opponent, now doing the same thing with Papercraft Dragon. The original idea of the Sivir Ionia version was that you would attack with Sivir and Ruin Runner, Sivir would give quick attack to the Ruin Runner, and that would allow you to use your Flurry of Fists to give the Ruin Runner double attack, going for a big combo finish. Twin Discipline doing a lot of work there as well, now trading that out for a little bit of over-the-top damage with like Pokey Stick, both having that in the main deck as well as the Gnar. And I actually really do like Gnar instead of Sivir in this Bandle City version for a few reasons. Number one being Gnar's backside has Overwhelm, and because we're not doing Flurry of Fists, we are not reliant on our champion inherently having quick attack to give it double attack. So instead, we just get to go ahead and play an Overwhelm champion, and of course, Gnar is going to be one of the better ones at doing that. We even put Rockhopper back in the deck because we do have sort of not only these quick attack units inherently, but a way to give our units quick attack and just take advantage of more vulnerable. So I really do like this update on this archetype. I'm curious to see if this is going to stick around, what the updates are going to be for it, but it is really nice to see the evolution of the Sivir Auction archetype going from Sivir Ionia with these Ruin Runner combo finishers to more of a mid-range board control ordered deck with not going for as explosive finishers in the Demacia variant, now moving over to Bandle City and playing Papercraft Dragon and Gnar, and I'm really excited to see the evolution of this archetype, if this is going to stick around, if this is just a What Am I special, because like 4LW and Faint HD, these players are constantly creating new decks, and what they hit Masters with at the early part of the season is not necessarily what you are going to see them even playing by the time the first tournament weekend comes around. But I do really like this deck, and I'm very excited to see what players come up with and adapt to as we head into our first tournament weekend and all that stuff, and what other players are going to be using to hit Masters, as we haven't seen any Galio yet, we haven't seen any Udyr yet, and as bad as people might think Udyr is, there will be someone hitting Masters with an Udyr deck. How much they play it along the way remains to be seen, but anyway, that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching here at GiantSlayerTV. Don't forget to like and comment, and let me know down below which of these 4 decks is your favorite. Which one are you queuing up for the ladder next? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. My name is Boulevard. I'll see you next time.